Start screaming.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
You're in violation of secure communication procedures, Commodore.
So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
There is no America. There is no democracy.
Our fifth objective, a new world order.
There are no nations. There are no countries. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West.
Right-wing conspiracy.
What do you call it when the assassins accuse the assassin?
A new world order.
Thank you for plugging in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
Well, just a second there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
I'm your host, Professor Thomas Henry Horan.
He reads everything.
Hello there, you lucky devils. You better bet your bippies he reads everything. So, happy Aaron Codger's birthday, everyone. He's 41 years old. Welcome to middle age Aaron Codgers. How does it feel so far? I'm not going to pick on him. I'm a big fan of Aaron Codgers, actually. But I empathize. I do empathize. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Allard. Long time no see, or long time no chat. Where you been keeping yourself? And please don't answer that question. So, they say the best vacation is a different kind of work. So, I thought I'd get away from crazy conspiracy theories and just spend a few happy hours delving into a plain Jane. There's no question about it. This must be some crazy random serial killer, serial poisonings in the Chicago metropolitan area. Actually, a pretty narrow slice of the Chicago metropolitan area. There are a lot of myths about this case, the 1982 Chicago Tylenol poisonings. One of them is the whole thing has kind of become it's a Jell-O salad of assumptions with no suspect. Well, they had a suspect, but then speaking of suspects, you get a guy who inserts himself into the case. Clue none. They had no clues until this guy writes a letter to Johnson & Johnson. And speaking of Aaron Codgers, you know who signs his paychecks, right? Woody Johnson. Don't call me Tommy. You can call me Tommy. I don't call myself Tommy. There's a point where you have to stop pretending you're a teenager and you have to admit that you're a gray-haired old man. Running around calling yourself Woody, and we all know what that means. I know his name was Woodrow, but that's not why his frat buddies called him Woody. You have to stop that. It's not Bobby Kraft. It's Mr. Kraft. That's a guy who knows how to run a football team. The Johnson & Johnson brothers, they are the Johnson & Johnson brothers. Johnson & Johnson, the parent company, manufacturers of Tylenol brand acetaminophen. It's his family's company. What does that mean? It means that maybe, no, there had been safety packaging before this. Johnson & Johnson refused. See, the thing is, this is why I was interested in this case to begin with, because the Linkletter family were pimping a tamper-proof packaging system at this time. And Tylenol's the number one brand anything that is flying off pharmacy shelves, especially over the counter. And they refuse because they can't develop their own technology. It's not the cost of the packaging so much as it was what they would have to pay in royalties to the patent holders on those technologies to make the packages tamper resistant. And if you know anything about the death of Diane Linkletter, please fill us all in. Right, the woman who was found dead beneath her 12th story window or whatever, apartment window. Her fiance, ex-fiance, whatever you want to call him, told the police, yeah, she ran towards the window and I tried to stop her and she jumped out the window. We'll never really know. Was she running away from him? Did he push her out? We'll never know. We'll never know. But they were pimping a tamper-proof packaging system, not the one that was eventually actually implemented on Tylenol packages to this day. The bottles they were using are still in use. Like if you buy the generic acetaminophen or ibuprofen at you-know-who mart, it's just the cap that you just pop the top off and there's cotton, and inside are the capsules or the tablets. They refused. They said they had experimented with a capsule that sealed. These were just gelatin capsules. These are literally gelatin capsules. And they just go together like this. If I had fingers, I would show you how they work. It's like this. Here's a chapstick. Okay, pretend this is two halves of a gelatin. And you just, one is bigger than the other, and they just slide over each other like that, and you're done. Extra strength Tylenol. No normal strength Tylenol. These were all extra strength Tylenol. Yeah. Robert the Linkletters are, they're like this with Mr. Lockheed himself. Invested in that company when it was a Canadian company, right? No. The Learjet company. The Linkletters, I've mentioned them before on the Stones Unturned podcast. So I'm looking at this case, and what I'm seeing is terrorism, but it seems to be directed at one company and one product of that company, Johnson & Johnson's brand name Tylenol, which had just become available over the counter. Extra strength Tylenol was prescription only, if I'm not mistaken, up until 81 or something. So there's this relentless advertising campaign for Tylenol. If you don't feel right, take Tylenol. This was really the first really big marketing campaign for any medication, let alone over-the-counter medication, was for Tylenol. Bare aspirin, yeah. Anacin, Excedrin. I got a headache this big, it's got Excedrin written all over it. Tylenol topped them all. Johnson & Johnson topped them all with Tylenol. So Tylenol is just absorbing all the sales, especially among younger people. Old people would still take whatever they took, bufferin, whatever. So what I'm seeing is a case of industrial sabotage. This is industrial sabotage, just like what's happened to Boeing. It isn't all errors and mistakes and sloppiness. There's a lot of sabotage going on at Boeing. Hold your breath. Speaking of turning blue, hold your breath until you see me set foot on another airplane. There's sabotage going on at Boeing. 3 Mile Island was sabotage. It's no coincidence that the movie China Syndrome came out a week before 3 Mile Island. And 3 Mile Island was sabotage. How much of this was intentional and how much of it was incompetence, we'll never know, because those people died before they figured all this out. 3 Mile Island was sabotage. There's no doubt about it. Was it accidental? Was it on purpose? Was it half? It had to be more than one person? Because what happened at 3 Mile Island wasn't really possible. But when they could go into the plant a few years ago, there was extensive sabotage. Is that what happened here? Was this an employee of Johnson & Johnson? What's going on? The prime suspect, this James Lewis guy, if that is his name, he and his wife had a child who died. They blamed Johnson & Johnson. Supposedly, this was their revenge on Johnson & Johnson. Why don't you get revenge on the executives? Why are you getting revenge on random people? Well, was this really random? So here is the official story. Here's something that really surprised me. I didn't even find this out till last week. All this happened within It was far less than 24 hours. 7 people took fatal doses of potassium cyanide in far less than 24 hours. Actually, the purchases took place in less than 24 hours. The fatal doses were swallowed over the course of about 15 hours, 18 hours. So that was funny. I showed you, and I'll show you again sometime, maybe later tonight. Pat Thomas. I will show you the clustering of the stores. There were really just 3 clusters of pharmacies. There was one down by Winfield, Illinois, one up by Elk Grove Village, and one on the north side of Chicago near Lakeshore Drive. There were just 3 clusters of pharmacies that had bottles of Tylenol, which would be very easy to tamper with. Even the boxes, there was no tape on the box. You could just open the box, switch bottles, or just do whatever. There was no way to tell if it had been tampered with. No way whatsoever. No way at all to know if it had been tampered with. So how did they do this? And potassium cyanide is highly corrosive. It would eat its way through the gel caps within a day or two. It would be obvious to the customers. So the first theory was this was somebody at the factory. Well, they came from 2 different factories. They came from one. There's a lady, one of the daughters of one of the victims has got private investigators. They've done a lot of research on this. She got a whistleblower from Johnson & Johnson who said those bottles all came from one distribution center. And with a product like that that's flying off the shelves or stocking the shelves every day, apparently all of these bottles had been placed on the shelves up near the front on the 28th of September. And by the 29th of September, it's the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. So how was this done? I'm interested in how this could possibly be done. The FBI pretty much ruled out the possibility this was an employee either at Johnson & Johnson or McNeil Laboratories or at the distributor. They didn't think that was really possible. So how was it done? There's only one way a person could do this. Okay? These are the 2. Here's something else interesting. All of the contaminated bottles were the 50 capsule size, the big family size. This is the 50 tablet capsule version, and this is the 20. The stewardess, the oddball. All right, you got these 2 clusters of stores, and then way over here on Lakeshore Drive, you got 2 more stores. There's a Walgreens and a Dominic's across the street from each other. She buys the 24 capsule bottle. Is that all that was available at that store? But these are the 500 milligram gel caps, the big gel caps. They only hold 500 milligrams. Here, I want to read you this story. It's hilarious. Let me read you this story really quickly. This is a week later. Bloomington, Normal, a couple hours south of. A bottle of extra strength Tylenol was purchased 2 weeks ago at Hogg Drugstore, Bloomington. Police reported early today. The bottle had the same lot number as that on bottles containing capsules suspected in the deaths of 5 people from the Chicago area. There were 2 different lot numbers. That's another thing. There were a total of 3 different lot numbers. Because they pulled bottles of Tylenol off the shelf, tested them. They found a couple of bottles that had poison pills in them. So you have a total of 3 different lot numbers. So it didn't seem to be possible this was somebody inside the company. 2 capsules were taken by a Bloomington resident who reported no ill effects. Are these? Let me see if they're poisoned. Here, nope, no problemo. I didn't notice any problems. Last night, the Associated Press reported The mayor of Chicago said a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol capsules was found in the bathroom of the seventh apparent victim, identified as Paula Prince, the stewardess for United Airlines. The mayor said the bottle bore the lot number, now if you can't believe the mayor of Chicago, who can you believe? Which had not been listed by the company among the known contaminated lots. The police said the bottle in Miss Prince's bathroom was a 24-count bottle, unlike the 50-count bottles implicated in the other deaths. You talk about bad luck. She's the last victim. If she had bought the 50-capsule bottle, this would have happened to her. Number two, these are not bottles that are 24 or 50 poison capsules. These are bottles with only a couple of poison capsules at the top. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. This is a big point as far as I'm concerned. Cyanide was found in some of the remaining capsules, police said. You talk about bad luck. It was possible she could have taken one that didn't have the poison in it. Then the news would come on saying, don't take Tylenol. She took this a few hours. Now, there was no internet. There were no texts. But the TV news that night would have said, for Christ's sake, don't take Tylenol, extra strength capsules. And right? Did she check the lot number and take it anyway, like the guy from Bloomington? Boy, that's some bad luck. And once again, the parents of the little girl, the 12-year-old girl who died, and the extra strength Tylenol was not for children. But, the thing is, the girl's parents, the Kellermans, the first victim, both parents worked for United Airlines. And apparently the mother was a stewardess, at least at one time. I need to verify that. But they all three worked for United Airlines out of O'Hare Airport. Talk about bad luck. If she had bought the bottle of Tylenol from the duty-free shop at the airport on her way home, this never would have happened to her. That's some bad luck. That's some weirdly specific bad luck. And I'm a big fan of weirdly specific bad luck. Let alone weirdly specific. You guys switched to Anderson for a year? Speaking of industrial espionage, did it fix the headaches? No, because cyanide is like carbon monoxide. It blocks the red blood cells absorb it, and they don't absorb oxygen. So you slowly asphyxiate, just like carbon monoxide. Once your blood cells are saturated with carbon monoxide, you can open the door, you get fresh air, and it won't do any good. Your blood has to be replaced. Or there's some antidotes, but they have to be given right away. So you die of a headache. You go through headache, nausea. Here's another thing. None of the victims vomited. See, the thing about rats is rats can't vomit. That's why rat poison kills rats, but not dogs. If your dog eats the rat poison, the dog will vomit up the rat poison. It's not 100% safe, but what I'm saying is, I'm going to get to the other suspicious stuff in a minute. So there's that. The last victim, you talk about bad luck, and on top of everything else, she works with the parents of the first victim. But back to how this was done. How would you do this? You got two choices. You could go into every pharmacy and grab the bottle of Tylenol, open the box. You got to open the box. You pop the lid, you pull out the cotton, and you've got some capsules in your pocket, and you pour them in. Now, here's what's interesting. With the death of the stewardess, supposedly there was exactly one capsule missing. It wasn't a case of somebody just pouring extra, because what customer takes the bottle home and counts, I better get 50. Oh, there's 55. I'm taking this bottle back. So they either popped it open and just poured 3 or 4 capsules and put the cotton back and snapped the cap back and put it back in the box and put it back on the shelf with nobody noticing. At a total of 7 or 8 pharmacies were found to have contaminated one way or the other. One way or the other, tests revealed about 7 pharmacies. Or somebody went and bought 10 bottles of extra strength Tylenol. What I'm wondering is, they couldn't have bought them all at one pharmacy because somebody came in and bought 10 bottles of extra strength Tylenol. So they have to go from pharmacy to pharmacy, buy 1 bottle, maybe 2. Well, maybe one of the pharmacies they went to only had the 24. Something here is not adding up. Because if you went to one pharmacy or you went to your neighborhood pharmacy, you bought 10 bottles, you brought them home, you spike them, then you take them around, and then you go to the Walgreens on the north side of Chicago, and you notice, oh shit, there's no space on this rack for the 50. I'm going to have to use the 24. What's going on here exactly? I'm trying to figure out how this was done, let alone why, let alone by who. Got to figure out how it was done. The only way it could possibly be done is you go out and you buy a bunch of bottles, you bring them home, you open some of the capsules, you dump out the acetaminophen, and then you replace that with potassium cyanide. Now, a rounded tablespoon would be more than enough to spike all the capsules that were accounted for. 1 rounded tablespoon. That's not very much. There were, in those days, potassium cyanide was kind of easy to come by. We're going to come back to that. But if you had potassium cyanide powder and you put it in the capsules and you put them back in the boxes, which is easy to do, but you can't let them sit on the shelf, because the cyanide will eat through the gel caps. You got to put them right back on the shelf. Then you go around to all these pharmacies. There's about 7, 8 pharmacies. And they could all be, you could make it to all the pharmacies in one day. And you pretend to look at a bottle of Tylenol and then you put one back on the shelf. The one that has, and you put it right in the front. So the next customer that buys Tylenol is going to buy that bottle. And apparently all this was done. The bottles were all replaced on the 8th. So I'm thinking they must have been spiked on the 7th. You go buy the bottles, you bring them home, you spike them the night of the 7th. The 8th, you get in your car, you drive around the metro area, and you go to all these pharmacies, and if you're putting product on the shelf, nobody's going to notice. But if you take it off, you pop the lid, you open up the box, you pop the lid, you pull the cotton out. Nowadays, that goes on at Walmart continuously. But in those days, somebody would have noticed. This is not a war zone. This is the nice northwest suburbs of Chicago and the north side of Chicago. Somebody would have noticed. So the only way this could possibly be done is somebody went to several pharmacies, bought several, and this was a fairly new product. Expiration date, April of 1987. But they all came from the same lot. So nobody remembers somebody buying 10 bottles of extra strength Tylenol in one throw. They must have gone to several and done this. And then apparently, instead of buying 11 bottles and you take 1 bottle home and you spike them, and then you just open up 10 more bottles and you dump a couple in each one, and then you put those on the shelves. Apparently, they're taking them out of the bottles, spiking them, and putting them back in each bottle individually? Maybe. But that's apparently how it was done. You couldn't do it in the store. You had to take them home. Now, what about project merchandisers? Well, for chips and soda, yeah. But a pharmacy gets their pharmaceuticals from one central distributor, usually like a Walgreens company warehouse. I worked at a Casey's General Store about 100 years ago, and we would get a few things, like the bread would come in, the bread truck guy would bring in the bread, the soda guy would bring the soda. Everything else came from our central warehouse and we would stock the shelves. So it seems as though this had to be a customer going in, buying, let's say 10 bottles, taking them home, spiking them, and then putting them back on the shelf. But of all the thousands of man hours that were spent on this case, I don't know of anybody who sat and watched store surveillance videos watching to see who's putting Tylenol back on the shelves. They didn't even bother to check. I'm not sure they put I don't know what they actually did in this case. Sometimes too many cooks spoil the soup. There is a surveillance. In those days, it wasn't necessarily, they would take still frames. There's a still frame of the stewardess approaching the register where she's paying for her Tylenol, because she's wearing her United Airlines uniform. And so at the time, there's a receipt in her apartment that has where she bought that bottle of Tylenol that day, the 29th of September. They had cameras, but I don't think they really had. Some places had video, but the only surveillance video they had of anybody buying the Tylenol was the stewardess at the Walgreens, and it's not like a 30 frame per second video camera. It was a click, click, click kind of digital camera of some kind. And they would have to put them all back on the shelf I'd say on the 28th. And then the bottle that killed the very first victim, that bottle was purchased at 4 p.m. There is a receipt for it at 4 p.m. on the 28th. And that's the Kellerman family. Like it was the last stop. I don't know. I'll come back to that. It was unclear where or how the tampering had occurred. The company asserted cyanide was not used in the manufacturing process. Well, if you split the hair, like I like to do, you split that hair, it's true. No cyanide is actually a component. Cyanide is not a component of acetaminophen. This is true. Formaldehyde is used in a lot of processes, like decaffeinated coffee. They just rinse it with formaldehyde and then rinse the beans with water to get rid of some of the formaldehyde taste. You understand this, right? And when they make caffeine to go into the soda, they take that caffeine from the decaffeinated coffee beans and they add another chemical to it. It recrystallizes the caffeine, and then they rinse away most of the formaldehyde. You understand this, right? Formaldehyde is used in a lot of these processes in pharmaceutical products, a lot. But cyanide is only used to manufacture some drugs. But they did use cyanide at the factory for other processes and used it in the lab to test, like some drugs, there's an inert material, right, to slow down absorption and things like that. Like they use chalk dust and things. They use cyanide to test for contaminants like lead. So somebody at the factory could have easily gotten access to the cyanide, but it didn't look like it would take more than one employee at more than one factory or distribution center. But he said the cyanide was kept in small amounts in a laboratory. Well, what do you mean by small amounts? 50-gallon drums? 5-gallon drums? What's a small amount of potassium cyanide? If you work in a chrome plating place, 5 gallons is a small amount of cyanide. In the New York metropolitan area, same lot number, no contamination. Before the discovery of the 7th victim, so you got 6 victims, 3 from one family. So you've got one family and then 3 more victims. You have 4 bottles of Tylenol, 3 stores. So 2 bottles purchased at one store. And that's interesting because the Kellermans and I think it's the Kellermans, 2 bottles from one store. Interesting. But geographically, of course, these victims are going to be related. They're going to be living near each other. 2 batches, a total of 3 batches, as a matter of fact. Are you with me? Yeah, the one in Bloomington Northern. Took 2 capsules, felt fine. Did it cure his headache? Okay, this is a contemporary article from the time. I'm having a hard time nailing this down. Okay. The Jewel Foods on North Vale Avenue in Arlington Heights, the Jewel Foods at the Grove Mall in Elk Grove Village, the Osco drugstore, and Jewel and Osco merged very soon. Were they going through the merger at the time, Jewel and Osco? The Osco drugstore at the Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg, where 2 laced bottles were found but had not been purchased. I think Schaumburg, they found, when they pulled the bottles off the shelf, they found 2 more bottles, but nobody had bought the ones in Schaumburg. The Walgreen drugstore on North Wells Street in Chicago, where the stewardess bought hers, and Frank's Finer Foods supermarket in Winfield. Oh, that's right. There were two victims in the Winfield area, so they bought theirs at Frank's Finer Foods. And one more bottle of tainted pills was found on the shelf of a Dominic's near the Walgreens, where the stewardess bought hers. Okay, are you with me? So that's Jewel Foods, Osco Drugs, Walgreens, Frank's, and Dominic's. 6 stores total. You could visit all 6 of those stores in one day. That could be done. That could easily be done. Because these stores are no more than 20, 30 minutes apart. So if it takes you an hour to hit one cluster and it takes you 2 hours, you could get it all done on the 28th. No problem. One person could do this. The one that was found in Dominic's was pulled off the shelf before it could be sold. I think people had bought some and turned it in, and luckily enough, they hadn't taken the poison pills, because there's only a couple per bottle, apparently. Some people are like, just throw away the top 3 or 4 pills, just to be safe. We were getting a lot of wackos calling, saying they did it. Well, isn't that what you're looking for, a wacko? Other theories have come and gone as well. Some have suggested it was Lori Dan, the woman who shot several children at an elementary school in north suburban Winnetka. Have you ever heard of this? I'm going to look into that one. We were getting a lot of wackos calling saying they did it. Now, the daughter of one of the victims said that's when the whole lie of the story became so obvious. Michelle Rosen, daughter of Mary Lynn Reiner, the woman who just had a baby, and she came home and she got some extra strength Tylenol to help with the pain and dropped dead. Oh, I didn't get the. I'm gonna contact her and see if she has information. But that she made contact with a Johnson & Johnson whistleblower who said, no, they all came from one distribution center and it could have been somebody inside Johnson & Johnson. And the whole madman theory that never went anywhere, except for the guy who wrote the letters after. But see, he didn't write the letters he didn't write the letters till October 4th or 5th or something, about almost a week later. But that guy turns out to be spooky. I haven't even talked about that guy yet. Bob Linklater, who patented the cap. Now, that's not the one that they used. Oh, yeah, right. It's used in chrome plating, gold plating, silver plating, copper plating. It's used in gold mining and silver mining. I think that's where, in prospecting, I think that's where, see, it's just a couple years after this, Diane Ellsworth in Yonkers and Leonard Lake also died from gel caps infused with potassium cyanide. Here it is, Scott Bartz. He was a Johnson & Johnson employee turned whistleblower. He knew the distribution chain well. All of the retail stores with poison bottles all came from the same point of distribution. Yeah, there's a letter, Pat Thomas. The suspect, watch the documentary if you get a chance on Paramount Plus. It's called Painkiller. It's pretty good. They did a pretty good documentary about this last year. And a couple of people died right after the documentary came out, which is also suspicious. Because, first of all, nobody suspected poisoning. Even the 12-year-old girl, the diagnosis was stroke. And everybody else was diagnosed with heart attack. Cyanide poisoning can also be confused for pneumonia. Yeah, no one has ever really... So here are stories by quotes at the time. Investigator Pichos. Deputy Medical Examiner Donahue. I was very lucky because this investigator was able to smell the cyanide. Only about half the population can smell it. So he's on the phone with this guy and he asks him, open it up and smell it. So he opens it up and smells it and he says, it smells like almonds. And he says, aha, put the lid back on it and don't eat it, bring it back in. There's a longer version of this. During the frantic search for clues in the fall of '82, a public health nurse, Helen Jensen, wonders out loud if something was wrong with the Tylenol pills everyone had taken. The thing is, we just happen to have somebody out there who is capable of smelling cyanide. Donahue examined the bodies, looking to see if cyanide was in fact inside. He notices a few things. Their skin is red. That's exactly like carbon monoxide poisoning. Because the red blood cells are red, but they're not. That's not from the oxygen. It's from the cyanide or the carbon monoxide. Also, they smell strange, like bitter almonds. When Donahue looks inside their stomachs, he sees the lining is all eroded and it's not acidic inside the stomach anymore, which is strange. The cyanide reacts with the hydrochloric acid to make hydrogen cyanide gas. He puts all of these signs together, but he didn't find the gel caps. Leonard Lake chewed his gel cap full of cyanide. It works a lot faster that way. This is going to be a point I'm going to come up with here in just a minute. I found at least some of the autopsy reports. I'm going to read those in detail later this week, just for fun. Investigators discovered the capsules were pried open and put back together. Well, you just pull them apart. A lot of gel cap medicines to this, a lot of supplements that you take. There is a more advanced gel cap or cellulose cap because they break down at different rates that are sealed. But you can most of the supplements that you take, you just pull them apart and replace the powder inside. That's a piece of cake. Something that's suspicious. Where are those slides? Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. There's something else suspicious. The story about how these people die. And I found another connection between two of the victims. Non-trivial connection. I'll come back to that. I'm still putting this stuff together. Here's where it boils down to. Like the little girl. The family get up in the morning. They all die. They all collapse suspiciously quickly. Here, let me show you this again. Let me show you this. Maybe this will turn out to be nothing, but okay, let me show you this. Okay, here are your clusters of stores. Here are 3 stores here. Here's 3 stores here. And then here's this store that sticks out like a sore thumb all the way over here in the north side of the city. This is the Kellerman home. This is the Medina Black Horse Troop of the Shriners that Mr. Kellerman was a part of. And here are your other 3 stores. Here's their home. Here's 3 stores. And the connection between the stewardess is that Mr. Kellerman, Mrs. Kellerman, and Ms. Prince all work for United Airlines out of O'Hare International Airport. That's called geographical profiling. What does it prove? Nothing. But it's interesting. Because if they all know each other, and this is where he was best man in his cousin's wedding, and his cousin worked at Illinois Tool Works, where they used a lot of cyanide to chrome plate, copper plate, all kinds of products that they make at Illinois Tool Works. But there's more to it than that. And that maybe the kid was killed by accident. The target was the father, the target was the mother. And the kid was killed by accident because they're not for children. But she was 12. But all of them, the story is the same. They take a Tylenol, and if less than a minute later, they collapse. Well, that's not how cyanide works, and that's not how gel caps work. Cyanide takes a while. It's not like the movies where they, that there was cyanide in this bottle, and I die. No. It has to be absorbed into the bloodstream from the stomach. This takes time, and it has to be like all of your blood, or a very large proportion of the blood. Otherwise, you just get nausea and dizziness, and can cause permanent damage. But it takes, if you drank it in liquid form, it's the easiest to absorb. So if I drank it, and it had a few hundred milligrams dissolved in it, it would still be 3 minutes before I felt symptoms. And then another 5 to 10 minutes before, if there was that much in there, then it's just like, it's like being locked in a refrigerator and you run out of oxygen after about 10 minutes. That's how long it takes. Gel caps take 15 to 30 minutes to dissolve in the stomach. So it should have been a good 15 to 30 minutes before these people felt any symptoms, unless they're chewing on these capsules. And how many people chew on their capsules, really? All of them? So that's a little bit suspicious. What products did I film commercials for? I was in a commercial for, I don't remember. I was playing basketball, which I can't play for shit, but I was the only actor who really... What was it for? It might have been, I think it was probably for some, like Icy Hot or something. And I've played bartenders in a couple of commercials, but I didn't do any national commercials. You're not going to go on YouTube and find my commercials. That's not going to happen. Would have been a good time to demonstrate it, how easy. I don't have any. I don't. Why would I buy capsules? I buy the tablets. When I take ibuprofen, it's the tablets, buddy. Also, I don't want to scatter. It's dusty enough in here as it is. Hi, Kevin. So this is what I'm working on so far on this case. It's just things that are adding up that aren't supposed to add up, and things that are supposed to add up that aren't adding up. But how else do you explain this? If it took place over time, then it turns out connections between the victims, which isn't totally... They're assuming the girl was not the target, assuming the parents were the target, they were in their 30s. So the victims are all between 25 and 35. That's something. But the three victims in one family, 2 sons and a daughter-in-law, all in one day. But they're Polish Catholic. They immigrated to the States in 1964. What's interesting about that? I would like to know. But if Mrs. Kellerman wanted to poison her husband and her husband's lover and make it look random, because I'm telling you, number one, poison is a woman's weapon. 80% of the time. Poisoning, it's a woman. Number 2, poisoning the food or poisoning the medicine cabinet. That's a woman. This is how women work. 3, you got the motive. Possibly. Right there. If it's the man who wants to get rid of both his mistress and his wife, but it's the wife who buys the bottle of Tylenol at the store. They have the receipt. But she never talked to the police. She never talked to reporters. She disappears. The husband does all the talking for the mother. The father of the 12-year-old girl. Remember that. And he's the one who's a member of the Medina Black Horse Troop. And the daughter just accidentally, because it's not meant for kids, she was taking cough syrup. Why is she taking acetaminophen? The father's the one who discovers the body. He said she went in the bathroom. A minute later, he heard something hit the floor. He goes in to check on her, and she's already unconscious. Cyanide doesn't work quite that fast, and gel caps, they just don't work that fast. Have a headache, go get some extra strength Tylenol in the capsules. Take it. How long does it take? Sometimes there's a placebo effect. How long does it take for your headache to go away? That's how long it would take to start feeling the first symptoms of potassium cyanide poisoning. Now, hydrogen cyanide gas, like the gas chamber, is just like carbon monoxide, but it works way faster than carbon monoxide. That would only take, because you're breathing, and then you start breathing heavier because you're out of breath, and that can kill you within a minute or so. 1 to 2 minutes. Lose consciousness in about 30 seconds. 1 whiff will knock you out, usually, and 2 or 3 whiffs, you go into a coma, and you keep breathing it, and you're dead within a short period of time. But then it turns out some of these people have other relatives who died of heart attacks at 30. So stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast. This will be our Christmas, this will be our Festivus series. Maybe this will go nowhere, but so far it hasn't gone nowhere. That's for sure. Does any state still use gas chambers? I don't think so. I think it's all lethal injection, right? Why do they sterilize the needle before a lethal injection? There was something else in here about there was enough in each capsule to kill 1,000 people or something. No. And this was repeated many times, probably just reporters quoting each other. 500 milligrams would be enough to kill 2, or if you wanted to be sure to kill the person, it's a minimum of 250 to 300 milligrams for an adult. 500 would do the trick. That's why they used extra strength Tylenol capsules. These are the big gel caps. They hold 500 milligrams. One of those would be enough to guarantee to kill, unless they throw it up. And they're still going to probably, it took a few days for these people to die. So 1 tablespoon would be enough to kill a heaping tablespoon of potassium cyanide. You'd have enough. You could kill 15, 20 adults, not 1,000, and not in 1 capsule. It's not like the movies. It is not like the movies. Ricin, a tiny amount of ricin, will kill. Ricin is the most, and nicotine. Nicotine sulfate, there's enough in 1 pack of cigarettes to kill an adult if you're not used to it. If you took it all at once, there's enough nicotine sulfate to kill an adult. Instead of a caution, according to the laws, the hazardous laws, a pack of cigarettes should say danger, poison. Just like potassium cyanide says danger, poison. Because a small amount, 500 milligrams, guaranteed. 200 milligrams, will kill most adults. Arizona, California, Mississippi, Wyoming, and Missouri. There's no nice way to kill somebody. There's just no easy way to kill somebody. If you were easy to kill, you'd be dead already. It's not easy to kill a person. Look at the things people have survived. Look at the things I've survived. It's not easy to kill somebody. The Jonestown dose, yeah. See, it works a lot faster if it's dissolved in water. The uptake is a lot quicker. But even then, it took a while. So there's just something suspicious about this whole thing. If it had been spaced out over a week, it wouldn't be so bad. And there's the one nurse it's the Tylenol. Nobody suspected it was the Tylenol. The family where 3 people dropped dead, they were searching the house looking for a gas leak or something. Other than that, they were just, it's pneumonia. The little girl was diagnosed with stroke. Some of the people were diagnosed with heart attack. The first diagnosis of the 3 people in the one family, the 25-year-old, he was diagnosed with a heart attack. It's super easy to miss cyanide as a I just want to know why nobody else ever noticed that 2 of these families all worked at United Airlines. They might not think much about him being a Shriner, but if you look at where the stores are clustered, and over here you got the odd, one of these things is not like the others, and she didn't pick it up from the convenience store at the airport. She waited until she got down in the city close to home and then stopped at Walgreens and bought it. I realized it would be a little cheaper, but she's a stewardess, for Christ's sake. Going out of your way to buy 1 bottle of... And she supposedly died, like, she goes to the bathroom, the water, the pill, and turns around and collapses before she even makes it out the bathroom door. It doesn't work that fast, and especially in gel cap form. Then there's the woman in Yonkers. This was the triple tamper-proof sealed bottle of Tylenol had cyanide-laced capsules inside when they was found. But see, somebody could have put them in there later. I'm not sticking up for Johnson & Johnson in the slightest. But I've just always suspected that this was the Linkletters. Or it didn't have to be the Linkletters. Because Johnson & Johnson did not go with their system. But anybody trying to sell that system, because Johnson & Johnson there've been lots of investigations where they slammed the door on the whole idea of using tamper-proof packaging, which had become available by 1980. A few companies were starting to use it, and they said, no, 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 no. I wouldn't, and believe me, I know enough about industrial espionage, I wouldn't put it past these companies to pull a stunt like this. To shoot somebody in the face, take a 12-year-old girl, shoot her in the face to get a contract, maybe not. But to pull a stunt like this, shoot them all, let God sort them out kind of thing, dose them all, let God sort them out, these things have happened before. These things have, Boeing. These things have happened before. Yeah, that documentary came out last year, and some suspicious death happened. A couple people died right after the documentary came out, unexpectedly. They were older, they're in their 70s now, but still. The mother of the little girl didn't even participate in the lawsuit. It was all the father, and she never spoke to the police. The cops never talked to the mother. And they're the ones that's the Kellermans, are the ones who live in Elk Grove Village. But it's her husband who's the Shriner, not her, so who knows? Maybe it meant nothing. This whole Tylenol case is so vast, man. But if you look at the chronology of events, you get Manson and Zodiac in 69. In 72, you get the Death Angels, the Zebra Murders. In 74, you get Patty Hearst. 76, 77, you get Son of Sam. The late 70s, you get Jonestown. What happened in 80, 81? 82, you get the Tylenol poisonings. So on, and then right after that, you get the Night Stalker. In 84, 85, you get 84, 85, you get Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. It's one after the other. You get a person who inserts himself into the case by writing letters, usually threatening letters. You get okay, and then after that, you get John Benet. It's just funny. It's one after the other. Just one right after the other. Not funny like the Italian army. Funny like what Manny Grossman's dad did all those years. Speaking of pardoning Hunter Biden, what time is it? I think my supper's almost ready. You guys are probably ready for supper. I should get back to work on this case. It's getting more and more interesting. It's getting more and more interesting. And how many times defense contractors pop up in this thing? Is there something else I was going to show you today? I'll save the rest of this for later. Okay, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the next closing theme slide. Yeah, the Janices were from Poland, but they didn't live in Poletown. They lived in the suburbs. Well, I think when they first moved to Poletown is where Wrigley Field is. Well, it used to be Poletown. Okay, Bear with me, or not. I'm just looking for the closing theme. Well, here's that photograph I was talking about. This is her. That's her. And here's the guy who does look like that. The guy goes by a lot of names. James Lewis. It does look like him. Like he just got through putting the bottle on the shelf. It does look like him. But he would have had to have put the first bottle on the shelf the day before. But there's another guy that this looks like. And we're going to talk about him real soon. This guy right here, he's in the documentary. He's on the documentary. So what is she looking for? And is she grabbing the Tylenol from here? Looks like she's just paying for it. And this is at 4 p.m. Now her body's not found for a couple of days. And there's somebody named Bruner from Eau Claire, Wisconsin in the mid-60s who pops up in this, and then I can't find it. Oh, and speaking, it gets really interesting. This case gets really interesting. There it is. So, in the meantime, listen, if you want to save money, spaying and neutering your cannibals, just put some extra strength Tylenol in their food dish. See how that goes. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves and each other. And please stay plugged in. I'm Professor Thomas Henry Horan, asking you to please stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
He reads everything.
You better bet your bippies he reads everything. Whoops.